Good there, so let me begin by introducing the National Policy on Biological Diversity. This policy was introduced in 1988. It focused on conserving biodiversity and making sure we use natural resources in a sustainable way. Malaysia is one of the world's top 12 megadiversity countries because have amazing tropical rainforests and coral reefs. This policy clearly shows Malaysia's strong commitment to protecting nature while also continuing to grow as a nation.
In my part, I will be discussing of the three policy problems that Malaysia faced in its effort to conserve the biodiversities, challenges that are central to the NPBD, National Policy on Biological Diversity 2022 until 2030. Despite Malaysia's incredibly diversities, public awareness and engagement in conservation remain limited. This is a core concern in the NPBDs. For example, Target 1, which focus on increasing awareness among all levels of the societies, while Target 14 address capacity building for the access and benefit sharing framework. A case study in Gunung Mulu National Park, which located in the Sarawak, found that tourists had more conservation knowledge than the local community living nearby. This awareness gap matters because when people understand biodiversity values, they are more likely to support sustainable practice and conservation policies. Second, we face the persistent problems of deforestation and habitat loss, driven by logging, agriculture, especially for palm oil, and infrastructure development. Malaysia continues to lose forest cover at an alarming rate, and then fragmented habitat reduce species survival and ecosystem resilience. The NPBD responds to prioritizing the protections and restorations of natural area, yet as of 2024, over 3.2 million hectares of forests remain at risk due to land concession, according to Rimba Watch. Still, there is a positive sign. For example, Sabah state government aim to designate 30% of its lands as total protected areas by 2025, surpassing the national targets and setting a strong precedent. Lastly, we must address the compounding threats of climate change and invasive species. As temperature rise and rainfall becoming more erratic, ecosystem become destabilized, which giving invasive species a chance to outcompete the native one. This pressure is accelerating biodiversity loss across the country. In Sabah Moyok rivers, erratic weathers and invasive species are harming local biodiversities, in which there also a case of Klang Valley, where more than 80% of rivers are now a home for the invasive fish, which called African catfish, which thrive in outer ecosystem.
Firstly is to protect and restore biodiversity. Malaysia is a well-known megadiversity country, and this policy aims to increase the protected area from 18.9% to at least 30% by 2030, including marine park diversity hotspot. It also promotes restoring damaged ecosystems like forest and peatland through planting 100 million trees by this year. Institutions like FRAME, MARDI, and Zoo Negara play important roles in protecting species through seed banks and breeding programs. Secondly, to improve ecosystem service. Nature provides vital services like clean water, flood control, and climate regulation. Malaysia is using natural capital accounting to include this value in national planning. Projects like river management and mangrove restoration help reduce flood and erosion. New ideas like payment of ecosystem service (PES) reward communities for protecting forests. Lastly is to strengthen management capacity. To improve biodiversity management, the policy focuses on training, technology, and partnership. Agencies like Perhilitan use drone and camera traps to monitor wildlife. Another is My Bias. The National Biodiversity Database is being upgraded for better data sharing. Collaboration like university and local community build skills and support innovations which will help in biodiversity community.
Hello and good morning. My name is Gloria Natalie J. Godfrey, and today I'll be talking about strategies made by the NPBD. As you can see here, there are three strategies. The first one is mainstreaming biodiversity across all sectors. So this means that biodiversity should not be made into a separate issue, but should be integrated into national or subnational planning, which includes multiple sectors such as infrastructure, agriculture, tourism, and a good example of agriculture being integrated with biodiversity would be the agroecological farming methods. In this method, they are ensuring that soil is preserved of their biodiversity, and also they reduce the use of harmful pesticides. They also use the EIA, which is environmental impact assessments, to evaluate the potential effects of development projects on biodiversity before they are being approved. Okay, so now we jump to the next strategy, which is expanding protected areas. So Malaysia is aiming to protect 20% of its land and 10% of its sea to ensure that the numbers of areas is being protected from human threats. So this plays a vital role to help and support wildlife, sensitive species, maintaining genetic diversity, and also having better air quality by controlling the carbon in the air. A good example of protected areas is Tun Mustafa Marine Park, which is located in Sabah. So Tun Mustafa Marine Park, it has over 2.4 million acres, making it Malaysia's largest marine protected areas. And it also includes with 50 islands and also a shark sanctuary. So what makes this more unique is that it is being co-managed by the government and also the local communities, which achieve the goal of conservation and sustainability of livelihood of the nature. So the third important strategies that are being made is promoting public awareness and education. This can be done in various programs such as social media campaign, biodiversity celebrations, or educational institutions, and this helps to ensure that everyone understands how biodiversity affects everyday life, from food security to health, and how their actions can make a difference even if it's small or big. So to support this, the government can also work closely with NGOs or educational institutions to help integrate biodiversity education into Malaysia's school curriculum. So this helps to promote understanding about nature and the importance of sustaining it to the younger generations, which will lead to sustainable decisions in the future. So that's all for strategies made by the NPPD. Next, I'll be talking about the strengths of the NPBD. The first one would be the NPBD put multiple aspects into a single framework. This means that they understand biodiversity is a balance between developing social well-being of the people and also maintaining conservation of biodiversity. In the policy itself, they outline 17 national targets and 5 key objectives, which includes maintaining natural habitats, using biological resource sustainably, and strengthening institutional frameworks. The next strength would be the NPBD is aligned with the international environmental goals such as the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, especially Goal 15 and 14, which is life on land and life below water. This alignment places Malaysia with a global movement to protect nature and ensure that the country stays up to date with the worldwide conservative efforts. And thanks to the advancement of technology, Malaysia can also connect easily with global knowledge and funding sources. The third strength would be inclusive stakeholder engagement, and this means that the NPBD has an inclusive approach which encourages participation from wide range of stakeholders such as government agencies, NGOs, private companies, educational institutions, and also the local and indigenous communities. By involving this many groups, the NPBD can ensure that there are multiple perspectives and solutions brought into conservative planning, which can lead to a better, more cultural, sensitive, community-driven outcome. A good example of this would be the involvement of indigenous group in Sabah and Sarawak, which this community have played a long role of being nature's guardians. For example, the Penang community in Sarawak practices something called minuk, which means to harvest forest produce without causing waste responsibly. And that's all for the strengths of the NPBD. Next, I'll be talking about the weaknesses of the NPBD. The first one would be poor collaboration between government agencies. The lack of coordination between federal and the state agencies can lead to multiple problems such as overlapping mandates, uneven enforcement, or gap in accountability. Although a lot of the responsibilities is shared between the federal and state authorities, some do fall under the responsibility of one authority alone, which could be either the federal or the state. This is especially evident in Sabah and Sarawak, where the federal government has less control, which makes it harder for them to enforce consistent biodiversity action across the country. The next issue would be the insufficient and uneven funding of the NPBD. Between 2022 and 2030, the NPBD needed 2.38 billion to operate effectively. However, they only secured 1.4 billion, which can limit the ability of biodiversity agencies to conduct research, engage with communities, support other agencies, and promote properly manage protected areas. Although the NPBD promotes alternative financing, such as payments for ecosystem services, biodiversity offsets, and private sector involvement, these methods are still relatively new and underdeveloped in Malaysia. The third and last weakness of the NPBD would be the limited resources at state and local levels. So, especially in rural or remote regions, a lot of the local authorities simply lack the structure, skills, and human resource to fully implement biodiversity policies. This leads to uneven result where some parts like the Peninsular Malaysia perform better due to better networks and infrastructure, while others such as East Malaysia struggle to meet targets. Because of this, it is often difficult for rural or East Malaysian district to attract and retain skill conservation professionals, leading to a lower capacity in these regions. And the major factor of this would be the wage gap, because Peninsular Malaysia has a higher wage than East Malaysia. That is why the Peninsular Malaysia can attract more professionals in conservation than the East Malaysians. So that's all for the weaknesses of the NPBD.
Now I would like to share 4 key recommendations to improve Malaysia's national policy on biological diversity. First, we recommend improving biodiversity monitoring and making data more accessible. Right now, it's hard to protect nature if we don't have accurate and updated information. So, a national online platform should be created to store and share data with the government and so on. Also, using technology like drones and satellites can help monitor forests and animals. Besides, one way to support Malaysia's biodiversity policy is by promoting eco-friendly industries. This industry protect nature by using clean energy, reducing waste, and avoiding pollution. The government can give support like tax cuts or grants to companies that follow green practice. This will encourage more business to be environmentally friendly. Eco-friendly industries are not just good for nature, they also improve our health and create clean jobs. Supporting them helps protect our planet and build a better future. Next, it's important to expand protected areas such as national parks and marine reserves. Valuable forest, rivers, and coral reefs are still unprotected. The government should use research to identify important areas and work with state government to officially protect them. Lastly, we need to secure long-term financial support for conservation work. To solve this, we suggest setting up a national biodiversity trust fund. This fund can collect money from the government, private or public. It will ensure steady funding for important activities like forest patrols, animal rescue, and education programs. In conclusion, the national policy on biological diversity plays an important role in keeping our forests, wildlife, and ecosystem for the future. Thus, we can live in harmony with nature and protect it for the future generation. Thank you.